Wherever I go, I know I'm fully aware of being there, even when I don't bear going anywhere at all. Home is where conscience is, where life always gives all you could want or thought you'd ever need. Like wisdom in words you read, inspiring acts of kindness indeed, service to humanity, blessing all those you find who happen to venture across your path. Never mind where one insists to go, conscience knows that nothing exists besides this moment now. There's no other here or there, future or past, to evade sinner. We're mentors of moment. Identify personal flaws. Don't seek effect before cause, 'cause when in truth there is only the pause, breathing in between. Welcome, friends. I am your host, Zen Garcia, and I'm glad to be back. I apologize for not being able to come last week, and I know that a lot of people have been taking time to, go with families on vacation, and I think it's important that we have balance, because in this culture and in this society, so much emphasis is placed on achievement, placed on things that we need to do. And, most everybody is busy trying to survive, trying to work 5 days a week and then squeeze everything else that needs to be done, all the errands, family time, reading books, entertainment, sports, whatever, pleasure, all those things are squeezed into the last 2 days. And a lot of people, because of the struggle and the bind that many find themselves in trying to feed families and take care of children, are working even more than that. Sometimes 2, 3 jobs, 6, even 7 days a week, and may only have break and minor break, 1 or 2 days out of the month. And not only that, but they are giving up their sleep, and they're trying to only rest 2-3 hours a night, if like full rest, because for a lot of people it takes some time to wind down and to bring the body to comfort and a space of peace to where you can actually reach sleep and dreams. And so many are struggling just to keep it all together, and especially for single mothers out there that are, trying to take care of entire families alone. God bless all of you in all that you do, because mothers especially sacrifice so much of themselves for the benefit of their children. And there are a lot of families in situation. The Illuminati, that was part of the plan, was to destroy the family, to institute, incorporate, and introduce sexual deviance, lust, things like Desperate Housewives, which would destroy a lot of what was the normal semblance and peace and of the nuclear household of family, in way that our parents and grandparents were used to it, and they have succeeded. They have greatly succeeded, and the struggle has been placed upon a lot of individuals and a lot of people, and even the children. A lot of children are raised in broken homes, and that's all they know, and they again choose similar circumstances in their own relationships where they cheat on their spouses, or they think, now with these different polygamous shows that you can have multiple mates and that this kind of thing is okay, when the Father tried to institute and show to us, especially, I know that early on there was a lot of multiple wives, and that they were trying to raise as many children as they could to grow populations. But that kind of thing has caused a lot of trouble, even in the marriages of some of the patriarchs. It causes trouble, and even for Abraham, Hagar and Sarah, Jacob with Leah and Rachel, and then the handmaidens, Zipporah and Bilhah, all these different things. It causes a situation to where it can be difficult to maintain a nucleus of a family. But anyways, that's not the focus, not the topic of the show. The poem that I just shared is from my third book, and I just wanted to kind of emphasize being within the moment, because so many of us, because of the struggle of life, because of the situations that we are dealing with as not only a nation and a people, but also as a world, we tend to get caught up in the past or in the future, and we're always missing out on what's going on right now. And some of us have so much worry and so much stress that the moment always eludes us. And it's very rare that people can find a moment to where they actually are, completely embraced with what's going on. And a lot of times, it may take, it's the recreation or the pleasure or the things that they do, vacations to where they take their minds off of their lives or off of their situations. And that's why a lot of people do drugs, even though that, also places them into an oblivion to where they don't have to focus on the moment. And so that's the situation for world. And so I just wanted to kind of remind everybody to take a moment to enjoy and to find and embrace the awesomeness that is the Creator and the creation, to take a moment to, for balance, because not enough of us do that. And if you don't, your bodies will break down. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we have to have that balance in order to maintain ourselves in sanity. Otherwise, it's easy to lose oneself in the stress and the worries of everyday life and everyday being, because Father knows, the Lord knows that there are always things to worry about, always things to stress upon. And I think that's why in Matthew chapter 6 he tries to tell us to give everything to Him and to not worry about the little things or to stress the little things, but to just turn those kind of things over to Him and seek the kingdom and place emphasis on our eternal salvation. And so, anyways, the topic for today will be on the origins of the world. And for those that don't know, the quotes that I shared in the description of the show, on the origins of the world is what people reference as a Gnostic text. It was found as part of the Nag Hammadi codices, which were found in 1946 in the deserts of Qumran, and it was, supposedly though one of those many codices which were hidden by the Essenes, this particular sect that separated themselves from what was going on in their day and age, and they moved to the desert to kind of live a communal subsistence, to where they took care of each other and shared all things with one another, and they wrote down and even shared amongst themselves many of the texts that came to be the different parts of the Bible. The Book of Enoch was found in many proportions. A full text of it was also found there, and there's a lot of texts that are not available and were not available, that most had not even heard about, and that were completely lost, completely missing, and that many of these texts and codices have to do with when Christ returned from his descent to hell, and also from his resurrection. And, when he defeated death, went down into Sheol, broke open the gates of iron and brass, and took the patriarchs and matriarchs, the righteous, up to paradise, gave them over to Michael. Michael baptized them in the Arturian lake, and then led them into the city of God, and the place of the righteous, otherwise known as paradise, and that this is the place where Adam and Eve were created, and that they had fallen from, and that is referenced in what would be a return to our first estate. And so On the Origin of the World is one of those texts, and there's many of them, the Apocryphon of John, these different secret books of John and James, Thomas, so many of the apostles, and that these texts are also thousands of years old. The Gospel of Thomas, or the Book of Thomas, the Contender, it was written, they say, like 70 A.D., and so this was right almost as old as what became the New Testament and what we have as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so I think they are interesting to read and interesting to look at, and that they provide detail and add to a lot of the things that are misunderstood, and that people believe, in my opinion, believe that they think that they are, completely anti-scriptural or anti-Old and New Testament, because they are not understanding exactly what is being referred to. And a lot of people, that when they hear about a Gnostic text or one of these secret codices, these Nag Hammadi codices, they consider them to be that the Gnostics believed that that Yaldabaoth, who was the god of the visible world, they equate him to be Yahweh of the Old Testament. And I've challenged a lot of Gnostic experts on this to where it says that in the text, and it does not. In fact, the Gnostic texts cite the ruler of the visible world as being Yaldabaoth, and also as being Saklos and Samael. Saklos means blind god, and Samael is the angel of death, whom we know from the Targumic text and also other references that Samael is equitable to Satan, the angel of death, that death was instituted once Adam and Eve were beguiled and lost their bright nature, their immortality, and fell from grace, and that they were transformed into flesh after the day of Sabbath, on the 8th day. And what is being described in a lot of these Nag Hammadi codices has to do with the visible world and not with paradise and where Adam and Eve had fallen from. And so, and this is very important, and people ask me how it is that I know that the story of what is being described in the Gnostic text and what is being described in Genesis chapter 3, how they vary, and are they not contradicting in that one speaks about the loss of immortality, and the other speaks about the elevation and them eating from what was termed as the tree of the good. And for those that have studied and read these particular texts, it's difficult to understand this, and it's difficult to understand the differentiation. And so I'm going to try to focus on that today and explain this in a way so that when you go to read the Nag Hammadi codices and the various texts that are there, because they are sold and marketed as being the secret books of Yeshua or Jesus Christ, and that a lot of people, again, think that you have to, if you are going to embrace these particular texts, that you have to throw out the Old and the New Testament. And in my opinion, and with what I have learned, that's completely false. In fact, again, I believe, in the way that I lay this out in my 6th book, Sons of God, is that they give extra detail and help us to understand the foundation of the canon in a way that otherwise would not be able to be brought to light as revelation. Specifically, topics such as like pre-existence, predestination, and also that that the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent actually is connected to a bloodline and a lineage of people that do not worship the same God as we do not worship the Most High, nor the Son, nor the Holy Spirit, but are involved in the worship of the fallen angels, and are involved in paganism and other abominable acts such as the drinking of blood, the offering of children and sacrifice, cannibalism, these kind of things. They worship the angels who, these pantheon of gods and goddesses who are none other than the angels of the Most High, parading around as if they are gods. And so that's the big thing. And these texts refer to what Paul is referencing in Ephesians chapter 6 with the rulers, principalities, powers, wickedness in high places, what Genesis 6 refers to as the Nephilim. And my take is a little different because people equate the Nephilim with the giants, but in my opinion, the Nephilim are the fallen angels, and the giants are those that were born from the fornication of the fallen angels with the daughters of Cain. And so, and I believe Steve Quell also sees it the same way. He equates the Nephilim as being the fallen angels and the giants as being the children that were born to them. And so the reason I understand and know that what is being talked about in what we're about to go into, that this is a different story from what is referenced in Genesis chapter 3, is two different passages. And one of those I placed into the description of this particular show. And we're going to start with that because this is, in my opinion, one of the keys for understanding these texts and for differentiating the stories of the fall and what I call the elevation. And for those that after I do this show, if you're still, completely baffled and you want the source references, all of this is laid out in detail in my 6th book, Sons of God, where I speak about this particular passage that I'm going to reference, and I provide all the sources and all the references that are connected to this as key. It says this: now the first Adam, Adam of light, is spirit-endowed and appeared on the first day. The second Adam is soul-endowed and appeared on the 6th day, which is called Aphrodite. The third Adam is a creature of the earth, that is the man of the law, and he appeared on the 8th day, the tranquility of poverty, which is called the day of the sun or Sunday. And the progeny of the earthly Adam became numerous and was completed and produced within itself every kind of scientific information of the soul-endowed Adam, but all were in ignorance. And as I referenced in that book, the first Adam is a reference to Yeshua, Christ, Jesus Christ. And because we, Adam, as it says, we were made in the image of God. And the Son and the Father are one. They are God incarnate. And we were made in their image. And so the Adam of light is Christ. And we know that he preexisted the creation, that we were made in his image, and that the Adam that fell from paradise, that he was made on the 6th day. And so that's the second sentence. It says, the second Adam is soul-endowed, was given the spirit, the breath of life, and appeared on the 6th day, which is called Aphrodite. So this Adam was spirit and angelic and immortal and bright-natured, just as it's referenced in many different texts. One of those is the Kitab al-Majali, that gives very detailed information. Also, the first book of Adam and Eve describes their transformation from being immortal, bright-natured, and angelic beings to that of being in flesh form. And that this transformation into flesh form and their banishment to paradise occurred after the day of rest on the 8th day. And this is important to know because this is also part of the key of this particular passage. The third Adam, which is the fleshly Adam, what I reference in my 6th book, Sons of God, as Adam of dust. It says, the third Adam is a creature of the earth, that is the man of the law, and he appeared on the 8th day. And so this particular flesh, Adam transformed from being angelic, immortal, bright-natured Adam created on the 6th day, that he became Adam of dust and was banished to the earth, became a flesh-created creature of a fallen creature living in a fallen world with the devils and the demons. And this is important to understand because what we're going to go into is going to provide greater detail on this story. And for those that, again, have studied this material, this will help you to understand what is being referenced in all these various codices, because I believe that there were 13 or 14 of them found. Some of them were burnt, used as kindling, and those are missing. But that those that we do have available, they break up into a lot of different stories. In fact, it's referenced as the Nag Hammadi library because there were so many texts. And if you do have a question, just place it into chat and I'll try to get to it. Because when I'm reading, I won't be able to see what's going on in the chat room. And I know this material can get quite confusing. So let's get to the story of what I refer to as the elevation, which is when Adam and Eve were banished out of paradise after eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they were cast out, and they were placed upon, after the Sabbath, which is not Sunday, it's a Saturday, and they were cast out and placed on the earth. And that's why it says here in this particular passage that the third Adam, a creature of the earth, the man of the law, he appeared on the eighth day, the tranquility of poverty, which is called the day of the sun, or Sunday. So they were, Sabbath is on Saturday, and that's why I do my shows on the Sabbath to, because I consider you and all those that come to listen as part of the fellowship, and that this is church, really, that we are coming to worship, to seek truth, and to give all praise, honor to the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. All right. And, the last part, it says that the earthly Adam became numerous and was completed, produced within itself every kind of scientific information of the soul-endowed Adam, meaning the Adam's bright nature, the angels, but they were all still in ignorance. And so we're gonna talk about that as well. All right. I'm going to start with the particular quote. And next week, the show that I'm going to do on the hypostasis of the archons, which is it's also referenced as the reality of the rulers. It's another one of the Gnostic texts, so I'll be following up on the story that I'm going to be talking about today, and it's going to help you to understand the references of the archons, the information that is given about the fallen angels in these particular texts, because like the book of Enoch, they have a lot of information on the archons, how they fell, how they came to be the gods and goddesses of this realm, and how it is that they have temporary reign over we as humanity, and that we are in fallen flesh form, and that they are the powers, the rulers, the wickedness in high places over this world, but only for a short time. And that's why Satan was able to offer Christ the entirety of this world if he would just bow to him. Okay. So I'm going to be reading some particular quotes and some passages, some scripture from these particular books, and then commenting and also trying to help you understand them in what they're talking about. It says, "Moreover, the demiurge began to create a man according to his image, on the one hand, and on the other according to the likeness of those who exist from the first. It was this sort of dwelling place that she used for the seeds, namely," and some of this text is broken and fragmented, so it might read weird, some of it, but most of it, will be complete. Namely, separate. It's fragmented. I'll say ... Namely, ... separate ... God. When they ... in behalf of man, since indeed the devil is one of the divine beings, he removed himself and seized the entire plaza of the gates and he expelled his own root from that place in the body in carcasses of flesh, for he is enveloped by the man of God, and Adam sowed him. So this particular passage is talking about how Adam of light had even created, and that's Yeshua the Son, had even created the devil and the powers and principalities, and that he was going to, because I've talked about this, how our being now, our bodies of flesh, and our spirits, in that they are married to our flesh bodies, were created as an agreement between the angels of the Most High and as well as the angels, the fallen angels, and that the marriage of our spirits with the marriage of our flesh is a result of that agreement, and that's why we have the dual nature. You know, the angel, the good angel on the right side and the bad angel on the left side, and how we're tempted by, you know, the carnal aspects and the carnal nature of this world. Because one is the commandments and the teachings that lead to our eternal inheritance are catering to our spirits, whereas the things of this world, money, power, prestige, the sexual deviance, drugs, those kind of things, murder, evil, those kind of things, they are to lure our physical and to bind us to what will be a internal inheritance that finds us damned because of the things that we've done. All right, so I'm going to continue reading. That was from the Valentinian Exposition. And also, just so you know, in my book, Sons of God, I basically have dissected all of the Gnostic texts, and I've laid them all out in sort of an outline to help people understand and to give them more detail on the fullness of the story. Because just as with the scriptures and with the Old and the New Testament, you find the story of the patriarchs being talked about over and over and over. And I believe that one of the reasons why the scriptures do that, you know, like with the genealogy and things of that nature, are so that when Satan and the fallen angels and the seed of Cain, when they wipe out some of these texts, that we can still find references. You know, when they eradicate certain aspects of the Old and New Testament or other inspired texts, the Apocrypha, the Pseudepigrapha, the things of that nature, and they disappear, that the story is repeated over and over and over so that we can understand it in its entirety, in its fullness. Because, you know, the seed of the serpent and those that are dedicated to Satan and to the fallen angels, they have been trying to keep people dumbed down, and they've been eradicating and hiding text since, you know, the war began on this planet between Cain and Abel. And that's one of the reasons why the Vatican has all those texts, a whole library of texts, many probably not even available to the masses, but they won't release any of them. And they keep them, all that knowledge, for themselves. They're hoarding the secrets. All right. And so, in my sixth book, Sons of God, I line up all of these texts and help you to understand them in a way that, as that passage that I read about the first Adam, Adam of light, second Adam, Adam of paradise, and the third Adam, Adam of dust, how and where and what part of the story these particular passages are referencing. Okay. And he said to the authorities which attend him, Come, let us create a man according to the image of God, and according to our likeness, that his image may become a light for us. And they created by means of their respective powers in correspondence with the characteristics which were given. And each authority supplied a characteristic in the form of the image which he had seen in its natural form. He created a being according to the likeness of the first, the perfect man. And they said, let us call him Adam, that his name may become a power of light for us. And the powers began, the first one. I'm not going to read all this. It's just telling you about the different parts that they had created, which brought the physical being, the physical Adam, the flesh body of Adam, into manifestation. But I will read the last part of this passage. And this is from the Apocryphon of John, or the secret book of John. This is the number of the angels. Together they are 365. And these angels worked together to create the physical body. They all worked on it until limb for limb, the natural and the material body was completed by them. Now there are other ones in charge over the remaining passions, whom I did not mention to you. But if you wish to know them, it is written in the book of Zoroaster. And all the angels and demons worked until they had constructed the natural body, and their product was completely inactive and motionless for a long time. Another thing that you'll find in many of the different stories is that the physical body, when they created it, that it remained motionless for 40 days. And then the Son breathed the spirit, the breath of life, into this, what is called the modeled form of the clay form, and Adam came to be a living being. And remember, this is after the fall of Adam and Eve from paradise. This is the flesh bodies that we all now find ourselves occupying. And that, like Adam and Eve, and being immortal, angelic, and bright nature, that we were created as angels before our being born into the world and finding ourselves, attached to our physical, to our flesh bodies, but that these are just containers for us to occupy for life. And that even in dreaming, when we dream, we are detached from these bodies. We're not just the physical being, that our bodies are not us in entirety, that they are just the vessels that we are using for this lifetime. Another passage, it says, according to a Coptic tradition preserved in the Discourse of Abaton, the angel of death by Timothy, Archbishop of Brocody, the clay of which Adam was made, was brought by the angel Muriel from the land of the east. And when God had made his body, he left it lying for 40 days and 40 nights without putting breath into it, at the request of our Lord, who promised to become Adam's advocate and to go down into the world. God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life 3 times, saying, live, 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 according to the type of the divinity. And thereupon Adam rose up and worshipped the Father, saying, my Lord and my God. All right, this story is going to be repeated in some of the other passages. That particular reference is from the Cave of Treasures. All right, continuing. It says this. The rulers laid plans and said, come, let us create a man that will be soil from the earth. They modeled their creature as one wholly of the earth. Now the rulers, body ... they have ... female ... is ... with the face of a beast. They had taken some soil from the earth and modeled their man after their body and after the image of God that had appeared to them in the waters. They said, "Come, let us lay hold of it by means of the form that we have modeled, so that it may see its male counterpart ... and we may seize it with the form that we have modeled, not understanding the force of God because of their powerlessness." And he breathed into his face, and the man came to have a soul, and remained upon the ground many days, but they could not make him arise because of their powerlessness. Like storm winds, they persisted in blowing, that they might try to capture that image which had appeared to them in the waters, and they did not know the identity of its power. Hypostasis of the archons. All right, I need to explain this story just a little bit, because I didn't want to go all the way back, because there would be no time to talk about even what we're talking about now. According to the Gnostic text, before Adam was to be created upon this planet, Christ appeared to the angels of this world, and he showed his image upon the waters of the oceans. And so they saw, because they are the spirits of the air, and they were up in the atmosphere, they saw the image of Christ shown upon the waters of the earth. And it was the most beautiful image they had ever seen. And they came to lust after the image. Some of the texts say it was an image of Christ. Others say it was an image of Sophia. But it was an image of, the perfect human. And that they came together and created a plan that they would create a model form, a physical flesh body for this particular creature, almost like a decoy to get this immortal image, this angelic image, to come down to the planet. And they were told about this also, this whole everything about creating of the body, it was all designed by Christ, and that they were given the instructions on how to do this, and all this was for a purpose. Not only that, the angels of the first world age would have a body to incarnate into, and that we would be tried and tempted in this plane of existence, but also that Christ would come and take on the body of flesh himself, and he would defeat their plan and destroy their whole purpose, their whole thing of trying to be as gods and to rule over humanity. But again, as I said, he allowed them temporary reign, and he's given them a chance to hold authority over this fallen world and over our fallen state of being. But I believe in one of the quotes I'm going to read soon, it will talk about how Christ had purposed all this, and that their whole plan was going to be destroyed by him. All right, continuing. And when they had finished Adam, he had abandoned him as an inanimate vessel, since he had taken form like an abortion, in that no spirit was in him. Regarding this thing, when the chief ruler remembered the saying of Pistis, he was afraid lest the true man enter his modeled form and become its lord. For this reason, he left his modeled form 40 days without soul, and he withdrew and abandoned it. Now on the 40th day, Sophia Zoe sent her breath into Adam, who had no soul. He began to move upon the ground, and he could not stand up. Then, when the 7 rulers came, they saw him and were greatly disturbed. They went up to him and seized him, and he, the chief ruler, said to the breath within him, "Who are you, and whence did you come hither?" It answered and said, "I have come from the force of the man for the destruction of your work." When they heard, they glorified him, since he gave them respite from the fear and the anxiety in which they found themselves. Then they called that day rest, inasmuch as they had rested from toil. And when they saw that Adam could stand up, they were glad, and they took him and put him in paradise. This is their paradise. And they withdrew up to their heavens. Okay, so according to this story, it says Sophia Zoe, which Sophia means wisdom, Zoe means life. And according to the Gnostic text, she is the female aspect of the Christ, of the Son, and that she was the one that, in this particular part, other stories talk about that it was Christ himself that blew the breath into Adam, and that it was Adam, before this, the physical molded clay body, the physical form that the spirit of Adam was breathed into, that it was not animated with life. And we know that Satan and the fallen angels, they cannot impart life, that they can only counterfeit, and that they can only steal or manipulate or transform from what the Father and the Son had already created. That's why that even in one of the other texts, one of the signs of the Antichrist is that he cannot give life. So he can't just give life to people. And it's the same thing with these Gnostic texts and Gnostic stories. Satan, as the chief ruler, he cannot give life. All right. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to move just a little bit quicker. All right. It says this. And also notice that Adam gave them an answer speaking about how Christ would come later into the flesh and that he would destroy their plans. But the Blessed One, the Mother Father, the Beneficent One, had mercy on the power of the Mother, which had been brought forth out of the chief archon, and he sent through his beneficent spirit and his great mercy a helper to Adam, luminous epinoia, which comes out of him, who is called life, or Zoe. And she assists the whole creature by toiling with him and by restoring him to his fullness, and by teaching him about the descent of his seed, and by teaching him about the way of ascent, which is the way he came down. And the luminous epinoia was hidden in Adam in order that the archons might not know her, but that the epinoia might be a correction of the deficiency of the mother. All right, so this part is referencing, for those that know about, have studied these texts, you know that the female counterpart, or who we reference as Eve, that before Eve, the one that we know of as far as the Eve that was taken from the rib of Adam, that became the female aspect of Adam, that together Adam and Eve are one flesh, and that Adam, before Eve was split off from him, that he was, this hermaphroditic angelic being, and that, the angels are similar. They are both male and female aspect. This particular part of the story is talking about how Sophia sent Zoe, who's a reference to life, to be his instructor, and that she was his female counterpart initially, and his teacher, and that told him about where he had fallen from. Because remember, when we come into the flesh, we drink from the cup of forgetfulness. We forget where we had fallen from, where we had descended down from. We forget about our first estate. And so we can reference her as Eve, but it was not the Eve that was, banished with him. We'll get to that part of the story, because when the rulers, these powers and principalities, come to rape the female counterpart, that's when she leaves its body. And after the female model form is raped and impregnated with Cain, who became the first seed of the serpent. And remember, all these things happen on the earth. That Genesis 3 is prophetic, and that it's speaking about once Adam and Eve would be transformed into flesh, which again occurs on the 8th day after the day of rest. And in fact, the next quote that I'm going to speak about gives us, also references how it is that the third Adam, Adam of dust, was created after the Sabbath and on the 8th day, as that passage that I read earlier about the first Adam, and the second Adam being soul-endowed, and the third Adam being a creature of the earth. This is what all of that is referencing to. So it was here, once they were cast out of paradise, transformed into bodies of flesh, put into bodies of flesh, on the 8th day, that the prophecies of Genesis chapter 3 would be fulfilled, in that Eve, being beguiled and raped, would be impregnated with Cain, who would be the firstborn son of the devil, and that Adam would then have to work the soil, and that he would also have his own children and his own bloodline and lineage, and that it would begin with Abel, but because Abel was murdered by his half-brother, the lineage of Adam would continue through Seth, and that it would be here on the planet, once they were cast out of paradise, transformed into flesh, placed in what is known as the Cave of Treasures, because that's the first place that they lived. And even the Cave of Treasures talks about this particular transformation. But it was when they were here upon the planet, and after these two bloodlines and lineages came to be upon the planet, one came from the rulers, powers, the principalities, from the devil, Yaldabaoth, Saklas, Samael, and that Seth would be born to Adam, that there would be enmity between these two bloodlines and these two lineages, and that they would be at war with one another for the entirety, the full duration of what would be the Second World Age, and that the wheat and the tares, the goat and the sheep, they would be at war with one another until Christ came again, after he had, incarnated into the flesh, taken on the flesh himself, and then after being murdered and crucified on the cross and resurrected, that when he returned with harvest, that would be the end of the war. That the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent would continue until the harvest. All right, continuing with the story. Hold on one second. All right. This is another quote. It says this: after the day of rest, remember the seventh day of the Sabbath was the day of rest, and it was after the seventh day, it says this: Sophia sent her daughter Zoe. This is a reference to the same kind of, the passage above, just from a different text. Sent her daughter Zoe, which means life, being called Eve, as an instructor, in order that she might make Adam, who had no soul, arise so that those whom he should engender might become containers of light. When Eve saw her male counterpart prostrate, she had pity upon him and said, Adam, become alive, arise upon the earth. Immediately her word became accomplished fact. For Adam, having arisen, suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw her, he said, you shall become mother of all living, for it is you who have given me life. Then the authorities were informed that their model form was alive and had risen, and they were greatly troubled. They sent 7 archangels to see what had happened. They came to Adam, and when they saw Eve talking to him, they said to one another, what sort of thing is this luminous woman? For she resembles that likeness which appeared to us in the light. And now come, let us lay hold of her and cast her seed into her, so that when she becomes soiled, she may not be able to ascend into her light. Rather, those whom she bears will be under our charge. Let us not tell Adam, for he is not one of us. Rather, let us bring a deep sleep over him, and let us instruct him in his sleep to the effect that she came from his rib, in order that his wife may obey, and he may be Lord over her. This is actually from On the Origin of the World. So I'm going to explain this story, because again, it sounds similar to what is being referenced in Genesis chapter 3. Except for this is, happened on the 8th day, after the day of rest. This is not the 6th day, what occurred in paradise, as referenced in Genesis chapter 3. It says it starts after the day of rest, so we know that this is on the 8th day, and that this has to do with Adam of dust, or the third Adam, the creature, the Adam of, that is the fallen Adam. And so in this story, as in the one previous, it's speaking about Sophia, who's the consort, the female aspect of Christ, sending her daughter Zoe, which means life, and that it was Zoe that breathed the life into him, married his spirit with this male body, with this molded clay body, and that is when our spirits were married with what was the flesh body. And that part, that in the very beginning when I started to read all these different quotes, it spoke about all the different angels that came together to create the model body, and how it is that, our being in flesh, we have a dual nature, both good and evil, and depending on whether we follow the right hand, the narrow way, or the left hand, the broad path of destruction, will determine our eternal inheritance, whether we will take part in salvation or damnation. And so this particular story, again, the Eve that he saw when he was arisen, when he was brought to life here upon this planet, and when his spirit, the spirit that had fallen, his angelic, his bright-natured being, that was cast out of paradise on the 6th day, when that aspect, that part of him, was placed into this male clay body, the body of dust, our flesh, this is when he realized that Eve, the Eve that he found with him, was the one that had, according to this text, brought him to being here upon this particular planet. I apologize for that telephone. All right, I'm going to continue. Hopefully that will stop soon. It says this: now all these things came to pass by the will of the Father of the entirety. So even this part of it, this whole, this show, even with Eve making Adam rise and our spirits being married to the flesh, and the fallen angels having part in the creation of our physical flesh bodies, all of this was under the will and the directive of the Father. And also the Gnostic texts speak about the Father, the forefather, and talk about the Father of us all, and the Son, and all of this is in the text as well. But this whole situation, as far as the visible worlds coming into being, and the fallen angels becoming the powers and the principalities over the visible worlds, and also with our being incarnated into the flesh here upon this world, and the creation of the second world age, all of that was under the directive of the Father. All right, I'm going to continue because I know we're running out of time. It says, now all these things came to pass by the will of the Father of the entirety. Afterwards the Spirit saw the soul-endowed man upon the ground, and the Spirit came forth from the adamantine land. It descended and came to dwell within him, and that man became a living soul. So this is talking about that spiritual aspect, the bright nature, the part of Adam that was cast out of paradise, coming down and indwelling into the flesh body that had been created for him. It called his name Adam, since he was found moving upon the ground. A voice came forth from incorruptibility for the assistance of Adam, and the rulers gathered together all the animals of the earth and all the birds of the heaven, brought them into Adam to see what Adam would call them, that he might give a name to each of the birds and all the beasts. Okay, so this is talking about, again, the Adam here being banished to the earth, and the third Adam, the Adam which is the creature of the dust. And you see how the stories are similar, and how it would be so easy to mix them up, whereas one talks about the fall, and then the other talks about how the Spirit and the Most High, the Father and the Son, and also Sophia Zoe, the female aspect of Christ, how they raised us from our ignorance, from our being dumbed down, and from our having drank of the cup of forgetfulness. Because when Adam found himself here upon the planet, and his having drank from the cup of forgetfulness, just like we all do, we forget where we are from. We forget about our pre-existence in our first estate. We have no idea as to how we got to be here upon the planet, and what our purpose is, our mission, our role, our goals, or that there is a mission and a purpose to our being here, and that we have a higher purpose, and that higher purpose has to do with our spirit and that higher aspect of ourselves that is tied to and connects with the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and that part of us that was predestinated and had pre-existence, and that came into the world not to have a bunch of children or get a good job or get a good education or make a bunch of money. That has nothing to do with our true purpose, our real reasons for being here. Of course, that's a part of life, that's a part of the carnal aspects of this world, but our true purpose has to do with our spirit and has to do with eternal salvation. Has nothing to do with the physical and the fleshly aspects of life and being. And so that's why we have to make a priority of the kingdom. That's why we have to come to know the Creator and to know the Son, to know why Christ had come into the flesh, what His purpose was, how He defeated death, and how He is the way and the truth and the life, and that eternal salvation and our eternal inheritance lies through accepting Him as God, and as the example of how it is that we get home. And so, the Gnostic texts also speak about Christ's purpose and why it is that He came into the flesh, and all that is part of the text as well. But I'm not going to be able to cover that in this show. I just want to continue with this part of the story, and hopefully it will make more sense to you when you read and study the Nag Hammadi codices, the Gnostic texts, those things which have to do with the elevation of humanity once we find ourselves in flesh form. All right. The soul of Adam came into being by means of a breath. The partner of his soul is the spirit. His mother is the thing that was given to him. His soul was taken from him and replaced by a spirit. When he was united to the spirit, he spoke words incomprehensible to the powers. They envied him, ... Spiritual partner, ... Hidden, ... Opportunity, ... For themselves alone, ... Bridal chamber, so that ... Adam came into being from two virgins, from the spirit and from the virgin earth. Christ, therefore, was born from a virgin to rectify the fall which occurred in the beginning. There are two trees growing in paradise. The one bears animals, the other bears men. Adam ate from the tree which bore animals. He became an animal, and he brought forth animals. So this is, talking about the two trees in paradise. One, the tree of life, which is Christ, and the other, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And because he wanted to be as God himself, and that Satan has used this same lie, this same deception to trick all, 1/3 of the angels that fell with him, and those that like Adam and Eve, and even himself, to then be incarnated into flesh form. And so, and you know how it talks about in Genesis chapter 3 that if he ate from the tree of life, that he would live forever? It's because Christ is immortality, the Word. The knowledge and his example is immortality, because he lives forever. And so that's what we are aspiring to, hoping for, is a return to immortality, a return to our first estate, a restoration of our bright natures, and a return to paradise, that from whence we had fallen from. Because the story of Adam and Eve is included in each one of us. The fall of humanity, the fall of Adam and Eve, they're being banished from the kingdom, cast out of paradise. The same thing occurred to all of us. We find ourselves in flesh form now, but our first estate has to do with our being immortal angelic beings and being part of the Morning Star administration, part of the righteous and the elect that used to roam in paradise. That is our place of origin, our place of inheritance. Where we are now in this fallen state of being, in this fallen world, this is just a vigil, a sabbatical. This is a vacation, so to speak, where we're being tempted, we're being tried. But this is not home. Our home has to do with where Christ was referring to when he says, I go now to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house are many mansions. That is the first estate. That's where we are hopefully, if found righteous, and if we follow the commandments and we listen and adhere to the example of the Son, that is where we are hoping to have a return to. All right, I know we're running out of time. I'm just going to read a little bit more. If you have questions, you can send them to me at zengarcia.com. My email is connected to that. That's my Tate author website. For those that are interested in, this Sons of God, my 6th book that explains all this, and I'm actually reading from that text, Sons of God, just, the source references and the way that I've got it lined up and outlined in that book. If you are interested in that text, you can email me there. I'll be glad to, sell you an autographed copy, to send, personalize it as a gift for your family, your loved ones. If you have a birthday or Christmas or anything, or you just want to give it and share it with somebody, that I can certainly do that. And also for those that cannot afford, those particular books that I have available, which I make Lucifer, Father of Cain, which is, one of my bestsellers, and Sons of God. Those two I have on PDF copies, electronic copies, and I make them available specifically to those that cannot afford my books, that are, struggling just to feed yourself and your family and your friends, your loved ones. I want you to have access to the information, and I want you to have discernment so that when you read not only the Old and the New Testament, but also all of the other extra-biblical, extra-canonical, the pseudepigrapha, apocrypha, the Nag Hammadi codices, all these texts which I include as source reference in my books, I want you to be able to understand them all in their entirety, in the full summation of what is the revelation that is being shared, the truth that underlies them all. And so just contact me at zengarcia.com. Anyways, continuing. The Chaldeans mention Adam and say that this person was the only one whom the earth produced. He lay without breath and motionless and immovable like a statue. He was an image of that human above, Adamus, and was made by many powers. The great human from above, from whom he and every family existing on earth and in the heavens is derived, had to be completely submissive. Therefore, he was given a soul, so that through the soul, the enslaved creature of the great and most excellent and perfect human might suffer and be punished. They also ask what the soul is and where it originates and what its nature is, since it enters human beings and by its movement enslaves and punishes the creature of the perfect being on earth. They inquire not from the scriptures but from mystical doctrines. If you say that everything originated from one principle, you are wrong. But if you say it came from three, you are right, and can prove the whole matter. There is one blessed nature of the blessed Adam from above, who is Adamus. There is one mortal nature below. So this is talking about, basically whom we were created in the likeness of Christ, that the immortal, angelic, bright-natured Adam, the sixth day Adam that was created in paradise, that we were created in the image of Adam of light, or Christ, and that when we were put into bodies of flesh, our spirits were married with the flesh, that this is where we find ourselves in a fallen state of being in a fallen world, under the power of the principalities, the rulers of darkness of this world. and that until Christ comes again, that it will remain this way, and that there would be enmity between the spirit of the between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, and that this war would be ongoing until Christ comes again to bring forth the harvest. And at that point, every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess. Last passage, this is from the hypostasis of the archons. It says this: the rulers took counsel with one another and said, "Come, let us cause a deep sleep to fall upon Adam," and he slept. Now the deep sleep they caused to fall upon him, and he slept is ignorance. They opened his side like a living woman, and they built up his side with some flesh in a place of her, and Adam came to be endowed with only a soul. And the spirit-endowed woman came to him and spoke with him, saying, "Arise, Adam." And when he saw her, he said, "It is you who have given me life. You will be called mother of the living. For it is she who is my mother. It is she who is the physician and the woman, and she who has given birth." This is, again, talking about the story of Zoe, who was Eve initially, and she descended from on high in order to teach Adam about where he had fallen from, and about the, as it says, the way of ascent, because the way of ascent is just like the way of descent. Actually, I'm going to read one last passage. And in that moment, the rest of the powers became jealous. Now, when Adam was, placed here when he was merged with the body, the modeled body, the clay body, that our flesh form, our dust body, they became jealous of Adam, because not only was he more beautiful and more, in the image of God than they were, but he was also wiser and smarter than the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness of this world. Okay, last part. Became jealous because he had come into being through all of them, meaning his body, and they had given their power to the man, and his intelligence was greater than that of those who had made him, and greater than that of the chief archon. And when they recognized that he was luminous, and that he could think better than they, and that he was free from wickedness, they took him and threw him into the lowest region of all matter. That's the Apocryphon of John. One real quick other passage says this: since that time we learned about dead things like men. Then we recognized the God who had created us. This is referring to the chief ruler, and not created their spirits, but created their bodies of flesh, who had created us, for we were not strangers to his powers, and we served him in fear and slavery. And after these events, we became darkened in our hearts. So Adam and Eve are talking about how they, when they woke up here upon this planet, they realized that they were going to learn about animal things, the things of this world, things that die. They had lost their immortal bright nature, and that the God and the powers around him, that they were devils and demons, and that they were going to have to serve the devils and demons in fear and slavery. All right. All right, just wanted to thank the many of you that came to check out the show, all the different guests and all the various, those of you that have been longtime listeners. I send all my love to all of you, and I appreciate all of the time that you take to join me. The show starts at 5 p.m. Eastern, so I don't know what time that is Central, but we start at 5 p.m. Eastern and usually go to 6:30 p.m. Eastern, because I usually run out of breath by then. And also, for those that are interested, you can join me every Wednesday evening, 8 to 10 p.m. on at freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio. I do a show called Momentary Zen there every Wednesday evening, 8 to 10 p.m. If you're interested in all my different shows, all my books, the websites, you can find all that information on my main site at fallenangels.tv. That all the links, all the details, the links to my books, everything are found at fallenangels.tv. Also, I do keep up with one Facebook group, the Sons of God. It was started by Dolores Watcher Ruth here in the chat room, and I try to keep up with the questions and the information there. You can contact me at Zen Garcia on Facebook as well, and all the links, all the shows, I post links and I, list them on my Facebook page, and so that you'll know where I'm going to be. Sometimes if I'm going to be a guest, like last Sunday I was a guest with John the Baptist at Tribulation-Now. I make all of that available to people as well. Again, you can go to Facebook, Zen Garcia. I just continue to pray for all of you. Pray for your knowledge, your discernment, that you are blessed, and that you take time to understand the truth that underlies all things, and that the Father and the Son will lead you to discernment, so that you can know about those things that are coming and understand all of the gospel in its fullness, in its entirety. God bless all. Good night.